So, welcome everybody to the Mother Load, which is what we are lovingly calling this roundtable discussion. Thank you so much for being here. We really just wanted to create some honest space today to name something that so many women are very quietly navigating: the mental load, the emotional load, the caregiving load. And then on top of all of that, you add the workload and even for many of us, the entrepreneurial load. It's a lot. And I think a lot of us are holding more than anyone can really see, often even ourselves. And it can feel very confusing. Like you're supposed to have the same energy or clarity that you had before, but your inner world has shifted in ways that you can't always explain or even articulate. So today isn't a workshop. It's not a webinar. There's no pitches or anything to be sold. It's just a roundtable, a real conversation between the three of us and with you about identity shifts, about the systems that shape us, and about the nervous system level stress that really inform how we show up both in our lives and, of course, in our businesses. So, we're going to talk through those three themes that we all prepped and kind of are hearing over and over again with the people that we serve and the women that we work with. And I also want to encourage you, use the chat throughout. This is a chance for us to all connect and talk. And if you ever want to share, there's going to be a few points where we're going to ask questions. If you want to speak up, share your story or share your thoughts or share what you're noticing, it's a small group. So feel free to be comfortable doing that. Either raise your hand, either physically, or you can raise your hand using the Zoom feature as well. And hi, Tyler, I saw you just joined us, so welcome. So with that, I would just want to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves first. So Parijat, do you want to start? And then we'll go to Karen.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Parijat. I am the founder of Ruvel, which is a trauma-informed company that works to reduce pregnancy complications and reduce the risk of preterm birth. We do that through sensory motor and kind of somatic approaches to health and also helping people navigate healthcare to get better care that they missed in previous pregnancies and fill those gaps in for that. And we've expanded now towards working with parents of medically complex kids, working a lot with leaders in this space who are trying to navigate running businesses, running big teams, making deals in the boardroom, while also having medically complex children at home and the decision making and the challenges that come with that. And I do that work because I walked the walk. I'm the mom of a micro preemie who is a medically complex child, and I run my own business. And so definitely walking the walk with you all. So glad to be here. It's nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And Karen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen. I am based in Hawaii. And while I'm talking, I would actually love if you guys could, if all of you could pop in how many children you have and what their ages are. That would be super helpful for the context of the conversation. And just to give you a little bit of background on me, I am a coach. I've been coaching for 10 years after a previous life in ad tech. And I work almost exclusively with high achieving women who want to do something new and more fulfilling. And a lot of the work that I do with my clients is about supporting them through that transition, which tends to be a longer term pivot, and supporting them with finding freedom and fulfillment and flexibility in the reality that they're in as they move into something new. And as you might imagine, a lot of the work that I do is with mothers. So it wasn't always that way, but it is now that I am a mother as well. And my daughter, I have one daughter, and she is turning 5 in 3 weeks. So thank you all for popping your information in the chat. That's super helpful for us.
Yeah, thank you. I would add or ask for one more thing in the chat since we are talking also about business. What do you do in your business? Share a little bit about your focus so that we can also get to know you that way. And hi, everybody. I guess last but not least, my name is Quinn Tempest, And yes, if you're wondering, that is my real name. I've been told I sound like Marvel's next superhero, which would be great because I live in Phoenix, Arizona, where I would definitely control the weather with my superpowers. But for now, my only superpowers are I am a business and brand strategist. So I mainly work with women entrepreneurs to clarify what makes them unique, refine what they offer, and build businesses that actually feel good to run. I'm also the founder of Create Your Purpose, which is both a philosophy and a private community. I see a couple of our members here. So, hi to you who have joined. For the past 6 years, we've run that. So, it's for women who really want to grow their businesses without sacrificing what matters most. And frankly, inside the group, we dig into a lot of the themes that we'll talk about today: sustainability, clarity, boundaries, and really what it looks like to run a business from the inside out. And I am a mom of one. She's three. We're entering our three-nager era. So my soul left my body as she turned three, but it's slowly coming back into it. And it's just been a real journey. And how this roundtable came together was actually Karen was a client of mine many years ago and a collective member. And I reached out to her during probably my first year of motherhood when I was really struggling. And she taught me the term matrescence, which was so comforting and which we can always talk about today. And then Parijat came into the collective early this year and spoke to the nervous system and the fight or flight and all of those pieces that especially get activated as an entrepreneur. And it just struck me that I also get activated in that way as a mother. And so it's been a real journey to learn about how to find, as one of my daughter's books says, the quiet inside my body amidst the chaos that can often be motherhood. So I'm excited to dive into that all today. So to start, we really wanted to ground this conversation in identity because so much of the heaviness and the load that we all carry really begins there. And as we were all prepping for this conversation, we talked about the fact that the idea of postpartum, it isn't just a moment, it's a lifelong transition. And no one really tells you who you're becoming while you're in the act of becoming her. And a lot of us, including myself, were not prepared for just how disorienting these big life transitions can be, whether you have a newborn, a 3-year-old, a 10-year-old, or onwards. And I think between everything, the motherhood, caregiving, stress, changing seasons of life, they all reshape who we are. And that tension can show up everywhere in your sense of self, in your relationships, and especially since I work with so many entrepreneurs within your business, because especially if you're building a solo business, it's often a reflection of who you are. And that is often in flux. I know things that you used to enjoy might feel foggier, priorities absolutely shift. And also, the pace that you kept before you were a mother doesn't match the pace that your body often wants now. So, we thought we would start here with the question of who am I now? And Karen, I thought maybe this would be a good place for you to start us off because what you had shared as we were prepping was this idea of the other mother self framework. And I remember that really helping me at the moment. So, can you kind of talk about that? Because I think it names this tension really beautifully.
Totally. And you just named a lot of the tensions that people feel and the differences so beautifully. And yeah, let's talk about the mother self and the other self. So that's sort of this distinction between these two realities. So when I was really struggling in my postpartum journey, I think my daughter was maybe 2 or 3, but I took this beautiful training on matrescence. It was a year-long program. And that's where I discovered this framework. It's not my framework specifically, it's Nikki McKeon's. And it helped make so much sense of what I was experiencing, which was very similar to what Quinn was just describing. So there's this notion of the other self and then the mother self. And so the other self is who we were up until the point of becoming a mother for the first time. And that is typically, or at least it was for me as an older mother, that's typically very well established before you move into motherhood. So while you may not know exactly who you are, you have a pretty good sense of it prior to becoming a mom. And you're immersed in that version of you up until the point that you we could say conceive. So what happens over the course of time, including during the prenatal phase, is you start shifting away from this other self, like very slowly in that prenatal phase, into the mother self, which is where like this idea of becoming a mother starts to sort of come into your being. A lot of times in our world, particularly in Western culture, a lot of that has to do with stuff, right? Like we start welcoming in this mother self through the stuff that we buy, which is kind of sad, but we can get into a whole separate topic, a whole separate conversation about that. And then what happens is we have this child, and it's this initiation. If you even think about the act of birth, it is a little bit destructive in terms of it's changing a lot of things. So then you have a child whose needs require a huge amount of your attention. And so you're basically thrust from this other self into this mother self, and it can be extremely disorienting. And because it goes from all you all the time to all baby all the time. And it really starts to shake things up. And so your mother self is kind of like your other self is like not even around typically during this time frame. And the other self, it takes years for your mother self to kind of establish as the child ages, right? You're going through these different iterations of you're learning how to like constantly navigate with these shifts in your child's development and behavior. And it takes time to get grounded in having this human being in your family, letting go. And typically there's a lot of grief involved around things not being the exact same way as they were before, even if it's something that you really wanted to welcome into your life. So this mother self comes in, and it takes on average 3 to 4 years for this mother self and the other self to come back together. So they live as very separate entities for a period of time. And then over time, they come back together and they're different. And I think that's one of these, there's this thing that goes on in our culture where we have a child and then we try to get back to the way that it was before. That's not realistic because that version, that other self doesn't exist anymore. So there is almost, with the birth of the child, there is a death in some ways in terms of your other self as you once knew it, right? And if we think about it as a death, that's incredibly disorienting when you welcome in this whole other aspect of who you are and you try and get used to it. So the beauty of this framework is that it gives you, I think what Quinn found, what I found, is it gives a lot of grace to this process of, I'm not meant to have this all figured out and just go right back to the way that things were. This is something that I need to grow into, and that like it's a process, right? It's not an event. Having the child isn't even just an event, it's a process. So the other thing that I wanted to add on top of this other self, mother self, is just this dialogue around the masculine and feminine. So we live in a very masculine oriented culture, which means we value productivity, we value doing, we value goals, we value action. Having a child is this kind of like unspoken initiation into the feminine, which is very different. It's about feeling, it's about flowing, it's about receiving. It's really different. And so what a lot of mothers are facing, particularly with the birth of the first child, is they've oriented their life in the masculine for an incredibly long period of time. And that's how they identify as their job, as their productivity, what they do, etc. So then when you shift into having a child and you're faced with the feminine, there's a lot of devaluation of that aspect of ourselves, which is everyone has it. A man and a woman both have masculine and feminine parts. So there's a lot of conflict in this because you want to relate to this old way of being, but like physiologically, that's not where you are anymore. And so that's very confronting to women who are achievers, who are entrepreneurs, who are people who have done a lot in their lives, to be like forced into this stillness to some degree once you have a child, because you can't move at that same pace. And that is just as much a part of the other self, mother self dialogue as anything else, because it's really learning how to, again, integrate these two parts, because one is not better than the other, the masculine way of doing things and the feminine way of doing things. Neither one is better. It's really about how do I integrate and create a container for the feminine with the masculine, et cetera. And that's a much deeper conversation. But hopefully that gives a good context for kind of like that identity shift and what you're kind of up against in that initial time frame.
I think it really does, Karen. And I remember when I first reached out to you, it was a year in, and I was in a crisis mode of thinking to myself, I thought I would feel better by now. And I, if anything, felt worse. And it was exactly when I stepped back into my business. I remember that because I was affronted by the fact that nothing felt the same. I didn't feel the same. I lost confidence in my other self because I hadn't paid attention to it for a while. And it has been 2 more years of rediscovering that. And the fact that you said it averages 3 to 4 years, I was like, that's spot on. Because I only feel like now I'm really stepping into what will be the next stage of my identity. And I'm so excited by that. And my daughter just turned 3. So I think what you said totally makes sense. And I think it moves nicely into Parijat, where you focus, because you kind of focus on where identity shift lands in the body. And we talked about how kind of this identity changes makes perfect sense through a neurobiological lens. So can you speak to that, or what would you like to add?
Yeah, absolutely. That 3 to 4 years totally resonates with me too, because I think my son was 3.5 when I picked up a book just to read for fun for the first time, and I went, "Oh, right! I used to like to read." So yeah, it's spot on. And I'll add that, as you mentioned, it's an average, because those of us who have children with medical complexities, that will take much, much longer. And the way that it integrates will also be very different. And I remember just feeling like when my son came home from the NICU, I didn't resonate with anything. Not who I used to be, not who I thought I should be, not with any of my friends who were already parents of children of similar ages. Everything was unfamiliar because they were not having the same experience as I was. And in my introduction to parenting, a living child was a combination of quote unquote normal parenting stuff for first timers and all this medical stuff that filled every minute of every day. And that definitely altered, because it altered my journey, because I was also then battling what I thought it would be to be a parent, what I thought the whole experience would be, and what it actually was. And they were worlds apart. And then you add on this layer of the traumatic stress that I was holding on to from delivering extremely preterm, being in the NICU for as long as we were, and then being on high alert for my child who, yes, technically was safe enough to be discharged, but had, the wind could change in any direction and we could be right back in the hospital with severe issues. And so that's kind of those are the clients that I tend to work with, are the people who have, the losses and the NICU babies and the medically complex babies. So that's kind of why I wanted to add that. piece in. But when we're really talking about identity from a body-based perspective, I think these are some of those elements of taking the whole picture, taking the whole context into account when we are understanding what our identity used to be, what it is now, and where we are headed. And by that I mean our, just as Karen said, everything rips apart. That was kind of the word that kept coming to mind as you were describing it, right? Like literally ripping apart in so many ways. And also physiologically, our sensory system, our sensory motor systems, the way we hold our bodies, the way we move our bodies, the way we don't move, the senses that we still have access to after birth, and after baby comes home, and the senses that we no longer have access to, all of that changes. And so that doesn't just change how we move around in the world, it changes how we perceive the world. It changes how we experience the world sensorially, and it changes then the way that we are able to and also not able to integrate those perceptions and those experiences into what we will ultimately call our identity, or what we will ultimately start identifying as our identity. Because it's almost like the analogy I like to give is, it's like the glasses are different, the prescription is different, and the color of the lens is different. And so what you're seeing is oftentimes a surprise because of what you've been through. Again, because of the clientele that I work with, it's oftentimes, things have gone wrong. And so you find yourself in this place where, yes, you have a living child now. And I do work with lost moms as well. But if we're talking about living children, you find yourself in this place of, I'm a parent, I have this child, I'm going to be taking care of this child. And as Karen said, it's all consuming, especially those early years. And you get to this place where you realize, but it doesn't look the way that it's supposed to. And you can start looking at the people around, you start looking at your friends, your relatives, your sisters, your cousins, whoever, and you go, I may not resonate with this. And that's where it's so important to step back and zoom out almost and go, what glasses are you wearing and what glasses am I wearing? And there's no comparison. There's no minimizing or saying mine is wrong or yours is wrong. It's just a recognizing that because of what I survived, because of what I've been through, I was given different glasses. And so what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing, the context within which I understand the very same situations that my sister who has a baby about the same age is experiencing, why they're so different, this is why. And I think that is so important, because it takes away, when you can really understand that these are changes happening at a biological level, it takes the blame away. It moves it away from, what am I doing wrong? Why is this so hard for me, but it's not hard for all these other people? Why am I struggling with this when nobody else seems to be struggling with this? All those judgmental thoughts that, oh gosh, I have wrestled with for so long as well. When we can step back and go, oh, but no, my biology is actually completely different because of what I survived, because of the preterm birth, because of the NICU stay, because of the losses, because of whatever. My biology is operating at a completely different pace and in a different state than yours is, and then hers is, or then theirs is. And because of that, our realities, and thus how we perceive ourselves and the world around us, is going to be wildly different. Mm-hmm. And I find that in my work, before we do anything else, before we go anywhere else, really rooting in that compassion, letting go of that blame, and understanding this makes sense. Can we put almost like a math equation to this? 2 + 2 is 4. We know that. Can we also say, because you went through this, this, and this, and this, what you're feeling now, how you're feeling, how disoriented you're feeling, and also how happy and joyous, and also how careful, and also how whatever. Can we see how that also makes sense? And when we can nail that part of it, I think we start to understand, we're able to go more inwards to go, okay, how did my body change? What is different now because of the things that I just survived? And that I find is really helpful in opening the door. So in figuring out what that identity is, where am I going, and also what does my body need in order to get there?
Mm. Yeah, I think that compassion piece is what landed so much with me because it's what I didn't give myself and what so many women just naturally don't give themselves since we are socialized to be critical and self-critical at that. And that's definitely where my own practice has gone this year, frankly, probably stemming from your masterclass that you did inside the collective was how can I be more compassionate to myself and pair that with introspection of asking myself questions and allowing the answer to be loving and kind and understanding. And my perspective, obviously, the lens, the glasses I'm looking at all of this through is from a business standpoint. All of us are entrepreneurs. We have a business. Some of us are newer. Some of us have been in business for a while. And I find it so interesting because the identity is such a core piece of business, yet we don't often talk about identity within business. Oftentimes, we're talking in business circles as if our business is over there and we're over here, never the two shall meet, and they're siloed. When I think the opposite is actually true, especially for small businesses, solo businesses, and especially for women who are driven by a deeper purpose and meaning in their business. They can't be disconnected in that case. In fact, it's much more powerful to let your why drive your what. Let your identity fuel the decisions and the kind of the shape of your business. But so often, where I meet many of my clients, my collective members, is they're in that foggy state of transition. They're in that unclearness of who they are. And of course, the external expression of who they are will feel unclear too. So I always like to look more at business as an inside out approach. Is the more clarity you have around what you want to do, who you are, and what drives you, and where you want to go, the more that clarity can inform what clients you take on, how you set up your business model, what marketing cadence, like all of those things we normally talk about in business topics, all the what's, if they're not connected to a central why and a central firm identity, it can be tough. And I was at the exact place myself a couple of years ago of I needed to focus on the identity piece first because my business no longer felt connected to me. It felt like it was siloed. And I help my clients through that as well, which, is always easier to do it for other people than it is to do for yourself. But I think this is an important conversation around who are you becoming? And that's the question that I will pose to everyone. If anyone would like to share in the chat or even raise their hand and come off mute, who are you becoming right now? And what feels unclear or kind of in transition and flux right now? Just think about that for a second. Who are you becoming and what feels unclear or in transition right now? If you'd like to share, you can do it in the chat. I will only, we don't have to call out anyone, but if you'd like to unmute, you can. And hi, Elise, I saw you just signed on. Welcome. Well, any last thoughts before we move on to our next topic? Any last thoughts on identity before we move on?
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
I have a couple. So the first
Okay.
one is Quinn, based on what you were just saying,
Mhm.
like you cannot function well in your business without a sense of self or from a place of dysregulation.
Yes.
Business is a part of your life. And the idea that these things are siloed is a narrative in our culture, and it's not reality. So when we're super dysregulated, how would we ever show up perfectly? That's not a good word, but
I
in
get it.
our business. And, what I was going to say to Parijat was, I don't even think I knew what my nervous system was before I became a mother.
Yeah,
And
true.
because that sense of disorientation and dysregulation was so real
Mhm.
in my body that it was right. It was like this awareness of, whoa, I have to look at things and learn how to do things really differently because just trying to power through this will not work. The old ways often stop working if we're working in a compensatory manner for our whole life to mask for something, right? It'll stop working when stuff hits the fan. So the other thing I just wanted to add was to your point with medically complex children and traumatic birth and things of that nature, the length of time that it takes for you to integrate these separate things will take longer without support.
Mm-hmm.
And you can function in the world without having support, but biologically, physiologically, historically, we come from, our lineages are all rooted in community. And so without that aspect sort of built in the way that it was before, support is such an important element for regulation, for understanding, for perspective, for normalizing, et cetera. And so I'm really glad you brought that topic to the table, because it will take longer based on your individual circumstances, and it will take longer without any form of support. So I just want to echo those things.
Yeah. Parijat, did you have any closing thoughts on that, or shall we move on?
No, yeah, I think this is great. I agree with what you all have said, and I appreciate that you mentioned the point about support. And I think that's where, just practically speaking, with my personal experience and the experience of the clients I work with, finding those people who are living a similar path is so important. Like, I almost had to block out the mainstream parenting stuff, the mainstream pregnancy stuff, which it just had to, because like that's not my thing. But when you find your people, you kind of go, oh yeah, we have the same language. Okay, we can relate in a way that no one else can. And you're absolutely right, Karen. It makes a tremendous difference in
Yeah.
the
It's
process.
almost like you're given a permission slip to do things differently.
Yes.
And until you know the people that are like that, whether it's in pregnancy, motherhood, frankly, even entrepreneurship, you can often feel confronted consistently with the fact that you're not doing it the right
Mhm.
way. And that actually dovetails perfectly into our second topic here, which is systems, expectations, and your agency within them. And I think this fits well because we're kind of doing this thing we wanted to talk about, is zooming out, way out. Because so many women think that they're overwhelmed because they're doing something wrong. But I think the truth is that we started to tease out here is that most of us are overwhelmed because we're doing all of this inside of systems that were never built for us, that were never designed with us in mind. You know, we're operating without comprehensive childcare. It's very expensive, without cultural support, without spaciousness in our schedules, all while being told we should balance it all with grace. And what happens is those external pressures I have found, both in myself and the women I support in business, has become internal stories. We think we're behind. We think we need to work harder. We push, push, and push because the systems around us don't give us many other options. So, what we wanted to talk about is kind of the forces shaping our stress. Say that 5 times fast. And where our actual individual agency lives inside those constraints. So, as we talk, I want you to think about and even put it in the chat what expectations, whether internal or external, feel heaviest for you right now. And Padijat, maybe you can start us off here because I know you have some thoughts around how systemic gaps shape the stress physiology, which is what I really learned from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this comes up so clearly in the work that I do and with my clients that I work with, and even my own experience from preconception through pregnancy, through NICU and beyond. Which, the biggest one is gaps in our healthcare. The fact that we don't have universal healthcare, that we are fighting for healthcare, and that within that, you add on the different qualities of healthcare and the care that you receive depending on what you look like. Let's be really honest and call it out what it is. That is a massive, massive gap that we are trying to negotiate and navigate in a way that is not ours as individuals to have to fix. And yet here we are having to navigate it because we are trying to get pregnant. We are getting pregnant. We are raising our children in a world with this being true. And I think where that can get really overwhelming is to feel like, well, then what can I possibly do as myself, as one person? And I hear this from so many of my clients who are Black or brown skinned who go, I'm scared. I'm scared to be pregnant. I'm scared to go through this. I'm scared that my baby is not getting the right care in the NICU. I'm scared that my pediatrician's not listening to me when I'm saying something's wrong, or my own doctor's not listening to me when I'm saying that something's wrong. And where we find that balance, or I wouldn't even, that's not even the word, it's where we find that the connection piece or the overlap between systemic problems and individual agency is figuring out what exactly it is that you need from the system right now. First, we've got to be super clear about that. Are we looking for a new doctor? Are we looking for answers? Are we looking for more questions to ask because you don't know what you don't know, right? So we're trying to figure out what is it that you actually need. It's almost like putting a GPS coordinate in your phone because you got to know where you're going before you figure out how to get there. And once that's clear, then we start to look at, okay, we recognize that the systems are problematic. What can I do in this moment? Well, I have a lot more power in my own body to change the physiological state that I'm in, despite the messed up systems that I'm living in and I'm operating in, right? I have a lot more power than I'm being told is possible. And that really is kind of the crux of the work that I do is how can we shift out of, I think right now, especially at this point in history, most people are operating in functional freeze. And so I'm showing up, I'm doing what I'm doing. Checklists are being managed. I mean, it's overflowing and it's too much, but I can do it. Showing up for my kids, showing up for my business. I can do all that, but at the cost of my health, right? And so we have one layer of agency, which is, can we get ourselves out of functional freeze and into a place of regulation? And when I say regulation, I mean the ability to be responsive to these systems and the changing world that we're living in. And so that doesn't mean we're calm and happy and beachy and wonderful all the time. That's absolutely never the goal, right? That GPS coordinate's not going to be on a beach in Barbados. That'd be lovely if it was. But what it is going to be a coordinate where the road's going to be bumpy to get there. And over there is not going to be paradise, but it's going to be what's good for our health. And so if we can figure out how to do that, if we can focus on, okay, I've got that agency in my body. Now my body, as we were just talking about, is very affected by who I'm around and the support that I have. We do not need 5 million people to be supportive and to be in our village. We don't need it. We can do it with one or two, as long as they are our people that we can co-regulate with, who can help us on the journey that we're on, no matter the twists and turns that are on there, and who also understand the physiology of what you're working on. That is exceptionally powerful. So now within this system, I have one and now two things that I can address. And this is, something that comes up all the time with us in the work we do is, who can you call? Who can you reach out to? And we're only looking for one or two names usually. That's it. We don't need a lot of people. We cut out that overwhelm as much as possible. And then that third piece within the system. So again, we've acknowledged that the systems are problematic. They're downright harmful in some ways, but we're finding the spots where we can step in and go, what can I do about it? We know we can adjust to our physiological states. We know that we can cultivate the village around us that we want and need. And we're so lucky that we have technology like this where we can be anywhere in the world and be able to connect and do this work. I mean, I think that's the coolest part is I started out as a therapist and I could only work in the state that I was in, but really only the town that I was in because nobody's flying to see a therapist. And now I get to do work with people around the world. Like, this is fantastic. So it's opened that up for everybody to find our people. And the third piece on top of that, where we add into the agency, is being able to identify, once I shift those physiological states, once I can build out that village that I really want, what is it that comes next? What is it that I want for myself, for my family, for my community? Really being able to answer that question so we move out of the reactive into the more proactive and go, where can I take action? What is it that I want so that I can take action towards getting that for myself in a way that is health supportive and relationship supportive and just kind of overall supportive. And essentially, I like to picture it like doing these things builds this beautiful bubble around our loved ones, and we're all in it together. And it's like it's not to keep everything out, it's a buffer. It's a thing that when we hit up against a wall, when things become challenging, we don't just crash and burn and break. We have some bounce, we have a little bit of give. This is how my brain works. I have visuals in my head all the time.
It's very wicked coded, like Glinda's bubble.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's you want to have that cushion because that's what we're going up against. And I think when we switch from going from it needs to be, and we don't necessarily talk about it this way, but there's this expectation of it just needs to be more perfect. We move away from that towards responsiveness, to realistic, to go, it's going to get bad. It's going to be hard. How can I build as much buffer as possible so that when layer 1, 2, and 3 go, it's still not getting so far deep in that I'm falling apart to the point where I don't know how to get out of it, or that I'm being harmed by the systems that are there. Yes, they're there, absolutely. How much buffer can we put between the two delays the impact, or reduces a bit of that impact as much as we possibly can, and that's kind of the perspective that we take with our clients here.
That's beautiful. I don't know if you saw the article that came out in The Guardian recently around the free birth movement, but it speaks to kind of the gaps in the healthcare system that you initially brought up and how people are capitalizing on it and taking advantage of women. I'll send it to you after if anyone's interested. It's a little sad to read, but it intersects a lot of what we're talking about here on the systems view. But Karen, I'm interested to hear from you too, and how you're seeing kind of these cultural norms fuel the comparison over functioning in your clients, or even in response to anything Parijat shared.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of it, Parijat was talking about this. So much of it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, also around this lack of like built-in community.
Mhm.
And I love this idea of agency. And one of the things I talk about with clients is this notion of like complaints versus requests. It's like, because we can complain about the way things are. It's like, what's the request? And that's rooted in like, what is it that we need? I think the biggest thing that a lot of women are dealing with in particular is this notion of hyper individualism.
Mm.
And, I think it's worth noting that we're still among the first generations of women who have the right to work. And so there's been this kind of unspoken and spoken pressure of needing to prove ourselves that has sort of fed in with a lot of other cultural factors that have sort of fed into this hyper individualism. I need to do it myself. If I, there's a lot of that, and I won't go into all the details of it. And so like what happens, what is sort of sad to witness is that now like the systems that we live in don't support us, right? We don't have that built-in community, everything that Parijat was talking about. And now it's like it's also on us to find the support that is needed and to like manage our own healing, I guess we could call it. And so there's a really tricky line between having agency and like defaulting to just doing it yourself and doing more and more and more and more, and like allowing that to be something that happens because of just the way we've kind of been socialized. So that's the only other thing I would add to this topic specifically.
Yeah, well, I think the doing more piece is huge. I see that with my entrepreneurial clients, and it's almost an underlying, it's like the volumes turn down really low, so they often don't even know that it's the music they're listening to, but they believe, and I'm not immune to this, they equate doing more with doing better.
Mhm.
And I think this is a cultural norm that tends to get internalized for entrepreneurs, especially, which in some cases you have to do more in the early days of your business. You have to sometimes stay up late. You have to sometimes, take on clients you don't want to. But at a certain point in your business, you have to identify when the hustle that got you to where it is no longer serving you as a person, as a woman. Hustle has a shelf life. And I actually read this article earlier today, and she says the girl boss feminism of the 2010s, with its lean in ethos and its insistence that women could outwork any system if they simply perfected their time management, is starting to fold in on itself. And I think that's really interesting because I loved the girl boss movement. It was very empowering. But at the end of the day, it was very hyper individualistic, like you said. And we have to start to really know that overworking and perfectionism and feeling behind are not badges of honor. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned too, since I run a community of entrepreneurs, is one of the biggest ways to not necessarily combat the systems, but to navigate them better is to not do it alone. And like both of you said, search out community, search out help. And for me, I want to curate the women that want to support each other along the highs and the lows because it's so easy to go into default mode to wear busy as a badge of honor when you see everybody else doing it. And it's so hard to not fall into that trap. And I think that actually leads well into our final topic. And this is one, Karen, I know you felt very passionate about, so we can start with you. But this idea of busyness, not business, but busyness, of overdrive, and also the load that you're physically holding. And I think this is something that a lot of us are living, but we rarely name out loud. It's like this overwhelm and overdrive. And so many women I know, mothers I know, and honestly, myself included at times, we live in this constant state of doing. Busyness, like I said, it becomes our default. And sometimes I think it even becomes almost a kind of armor. Like if we keep moving, we don't have to and we can't pause and feel how exhausted we are. But as I said, and something I'm still learning is that doing more isn't doing better, especially when your nervous system is stuck like on or it's frozen and you haven't really had a chance to settle. So I think we should talk about that go, go, go state, what it costs, and how we can really begin to loosen the grip. So Karen, I know busyness as this glamorized addiction is something that we've talked about. So how do you see people navigating that?
Yeah, busyness is an addiction. It's been my addiction. And like any addiction, it becomes physical in nature just as much as we're using it to avoid. And so the beauty of busyness is that oftentimes it's a protection mechanism and it's stopping us from slowing, like our ego, the part of us that's designed to protect us, is stopping us from slowing down because if we were to slow down, then we would have to feel things that we're feeling. And so busyness is a very clever and wise mechanism for avoiding, just like any substance-based addiction. So one of there's a couple different ways that you can look at this. So like in my work, in coaching sessions are sometimes for my clients the first and only place that they're slowing down. It's 90 minutes. It's totally about them. And it's really about learning to slow things down. And what clients see over time is that there's so much value in that slowing down because it can get them to recalibrate and then they can speed up again. And then we slow down again so that we can speed up. And the word speed up or the phrase speed up is probably not the best one, but it's like, how can you move forward mindfully after you've given yourself a chance to slow down? And a lot of what comes up in that slowing down is grief, particularly for mothers. A lot of it has to do with an unintegrated birth or postpartum or prenatal experience. That is not something that people talk about all that often, but that's part of it. And what I see with every single client that I work with is when we slow down, there's often this buried misbelief that goes way back to childhood that has to do with performing, perfectionism, being busy as a form of like productivity. And these behaviors get implanted in us like so long ago, and it takes a while for them to sort of unearth themselves. And there's a process that I walk people through to kind of see what those are. The other thing too is, to build on what you were saying a moment ago, Quinn, around busyness is starting to learn. It's taken me over a decade to really learn how to do this, but it's asking ourselves, what is enough? Like, what is enough? And what I've had to do personally is learn to look at what I have done versus what I have not done, because that way of lashing myself, of criticizing myself as motivation, doesn't work for me anymore. Sometimes it works for a very short period of time, but it's not sustainable anymore. It's too impactful on my nervous system. So when we look at, like every week, I have a practice of looking at what can I celebrate that I did last week? What did I do, make progress on, or complete the week before? It was so difficult for me to answer that question when I started doing this years ago. And now it's like, on a piece of paper, it's like 80% of the page, because I've learned to rewire for this feeling of enoughness. And I've learned over time that how hard I work, like now I have proof of it, that I don't have to work as hard to yield the same, if not better results. And that takes time. Like, I don't want to tell anyone, oh, there's some magic trick that you can just do and you'll stop working so hard or being so busy. It really does take time to learn. If you've been doing it for 30, 40 years one way, it's going to take you time to shift and pivot into a new one. Mm-hmm. But those are some of the things that come to mind. So,
yeah. Parijat, I saw you nodding your head quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, that last part is something that comes up with clients all the time when we're doing the somatic work, they're getting into these new habits with their bodies, and then they'll get a message and go, I backslid, I messed up, it's back to what it was. And I went, let's think about how long have you been operating in a body state that we are getting you out of? And it's almost always decades. And we've been doing this work how long? Maybe with my longest client, maybe 3 years. Like, let's map that and see visually just how tiny of a sliver that is. And so it's not backsliding. It's to be expected. It's going to take time. And I so appreciate that you said that, Karen, because I think there's a lot of belief and also desire. Like, please just tell me the thing and make it go away. And I appreciate that you share it and go, no, in real life, it's going to take time. And it's not just time, but it takes repetition. You've got to retrain your body, the same way we do it at the gym. I'd love to say, hey, I've got biceps. Ta-da, here they are. I wish I could do this for 2 days and then it's done, but it's repetition, and over you're training your body. So I really appreciate that you said that. And I'll just add to that again, with the context piece, we live in a culture that rewards being in functional freeze. It rewards us being numbed out from what we're really feeling, and so that we can focus on being busy. And so what we're going against is not just internal training, but it's constantly being pushed repeatedly from every system around us, but no, this is the right way. This is the right way. And kind of going back to your earlier point, Quinn, it's hard when you're breaking those patterns, when you're breaking all those expectations, it's hard to do it alone
Yeah,
because you think, well, am I doing it wrong? Because everybody else is hustling, so maybe I
Totally.
should too.
Mhm.
But physiologically, it's not good for us. We all know that. And we are being rewarded for it, whether we like it or not, from the systems that we're operating in too. And so to have that layer of compassion for yourself too, that it takes time also because it is easier to continue operating in functional freeze. I like to tell my clients regularly, remind them our bodies will choose what is easiest over what is better for us. We will always physiologically lean towards autopilot and what is familiar over what is good for us. And so you can have all the best intentions in the world, but let's be really honest about what those challenges are and what we're up against so that we can build in some of that compassion and say, okay, this is not an overnight switch. I'm going to keep going at it. And that journey, that's showing up consistently, that's the thing that we celebrate because you're doing it. You're doing something really hard inside of a system that doesn't want you to be doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would just add like it's what you're describing is there are neurological factors as well. So we're working against pathways in our brain that are conditioned to do things a certain way. And the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity is it can be changed at any time, but we will default to the old way because it's a worn pathway in our brain that's easy for the brain to fire versus creating a new one, which is not hard work, but it does require, to your point, repetition and consistency and a lot of empathy and compassion along the way.
Mhm. Yeah, I think what we're getting at too, I think both of you even said the word, but I want to call it out, is you're almost developing a new operating system for yourself, which I love this because I've been doing this training and I'm developing a new quiz slash assessment for entrepreneurs. It's called Frazzled to Focus. And it's not about your business revenue. It's not about how long you've been in business. It's about how you're operating as an entrepreneur. So I'm calling it there's the frazzled stage where you're literally pulled in a million different directions. There's no center. And, all the things you're doing is basically throwing spaghetti at the wall in your business to see what sticks. And the goal is to be able to identify where you are on this continuum and take one step forward. And I think it's interesting because we're talking about motherhood, but I think of that quote, wherever you go, there you are. Maybe Karen, you even brought it up on our prep call. And I think a lot of what we're talking about also comes into your business. It's that swirl of overworking, of unfocused action, of throwing spaghetti in order to problem solve. And I have found, especially with the busyness factor, is that there's two ways of going about it. Either you just keep going with the pace and the operating system that you have, and you inevitably burn out, or you give up and you drop out of your business, which I've seen happen and it always makes me so sad. But I also think sometimes that's the best supportive decision in certain cases. The other option is that you have to create and carve out space within the busyness in order to get out of it. Like it doesn't just, I think I always hear that from my clients when they're just so burnt out, there's so much going on. It's like, well, I just need it to end. Well, either you end it or you carve out 15 minutes, 5 minutes, breathing room, just a little space every week. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Because what I have found that even above the time compounding, 15 minutes over 5 days, what compounds even more is your confidence in yourself, in your ability to show up to your ideas, and your ability to create a new operating system. And that does take time. So it's just funny that we're talking about these things. And I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I see with entrepreneurs too, is all of these things are connected. So I know we're at time. So before we end, I just want to open it up to both of you. Are there any last words you wanted to share, or even something that you want to leave people with to kind of lighten the load that they're carrying just a little bit, like one thing that they can think of as they move into their day? Anything come to mind, Parijat?
Oh, just one. I think I'll say, um, look at what you've survived
Hmm.
and hold that as tenderly as you hold your children because you've made it this far and I don't know what the road ahead looks like and you don't either. And that's okay. And I know that that uncertainty can be unsettling, but if we look at what you've survived, it can show you the patterns that you do have that you can carry forward to address whatever uncertainties lie ahead, whatever bumps in the road lie ahead. You have those skills, you have that those tools, and you've got yourself and whatever, we've talked a lot about patterns that we're trying to break, but there are also patterns that got you here, and those are the ones that are going to carry you forward. And just really lean on that. I think it's understated how important that is and how amazing you are that you are here in this moment and that you're going to do more amazing things with what has gotten you here already.
Mm, that's beautiful. Thank you. And Karen?
Yeah, two things come to mind. One is that overwhelm is feedback. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not negative. It's just feedback. And so it's a lot less about fixing it. It's much more about facing it, learning how to face it, meet it with love, and working at it from that place versus as one more thing to fix or to do. And the other thing that I would share as a closing thought is it's from Robert Holden in his book, Authentic Success, one of the best books I've ever read. But he uses an analogy of a NASCAR race, of which I have never seen one. But the beauty of this, it's funny to bring it up in a community of women because, well, actually, no, NASCAR appeals to both sexes, genders equally. But in a NASCAR races are long. The way that you win the race is the pit stops. So the car cannot sustain those speeds, and the driver cannot sustain that level of driving for as long as those races last. What allows them to win is the pauses and the support, the people that check the tires, check the oil, change this, do that, wipe them down, they have a chance to have water, et cetera, et cetera. So that pit stop and that support is so essential to being able to win the race and play that long game.
Mm.
So.
Oh, I love that. I might need to use that in some way. I usually use the metaphor of plugging your phone in and walking away while it upgrades, but I also like pit stop. That's really nice. I would say my thing is a little bit of a permission slip, is that you're allowed to build differently, whether it's building your life, building your business, building your family. You're allowed to choose ease, to choose support, to choose a pace that feels more human. And none of that makes you less ambitious. None of that makes you less successful. And I think so much of what we talked about is moving out of default mode, whether that's your nervous system, your business, your relationship to yourself. And that's something that I'm still striving to do 3 years into motherhood, but over a decade into my business. And it's, part of my mission to empower other women to not feel like they have to do this alone and also not feel like they have to do it like everybody else because it doesn't feel good at the end of the day. So, with that, thank you so much, Karen, Parijat. Thank you, all of us, for being here. I know we have a smaller group, but I know that this recording will go out. And really, as you move back into your world today and into the weekend, I would just say notice what you're carrying and what you also don't have to carry alone. I think even one small shift in how you hold the mother load can really change the whole day. So thank you, everybody. If there's any way to connect, if you guys want to put links in here, I'll put mine. Yeah, Tyler, thank you so much. And Elise, Tyler, Chantal, if you'd like to share in the chat one takeaway is from today, or even come off mute, we'd love to hear. I put my Instagram in there. I'm always on there too much, probably. And also a priority planner for solo business owners to kind of really get clear on what they want to focus on. Parijat, Karen, do you like LinkedIn? What do you like to connect with people on?
I will put my
Email.
website in. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I will put my website and Instagram in the chat. I
Okay,
can't type and
perfect.
talk.
Tyler, I'm taking away from Karen, overwhelm is feedback, more about facing it and meeting it with love versus trying to fix it. Yeah. To add into that, I like to think of overwhelm as like the app notification on your phone telling you it's time to upgrade, to update. It's like a little notification. Oh, thank you, Tyler. One from everyone. We don't need 5 million people to be in our village to be supportive. We only need 1 to 2 to co-regulate and who will be able to be there for us. Taking away from Quinn, choosing a different pace doesn't make you less ambitious or successful. No, although I know that's a hard one to disentangle. So, all right, we got the links in there for everyone, and I'll make sure to share this. Chantal says, "Thank you to remember how far I've come and to reflect more often." Yes, yes, yes.
Can I add one
Wonderful.
more thought?
Yeah.
So one other thing I was going to say is nobody has this figured out. No, there is not one woman on planet Earth that has it figured out for every other woman. That's not what this is about. This is about finding what works for you and creating the life that you really want to have. And that chances are that's not really going to look exactly like someone else's. You'll find inspiration in these different places, but how you want to live and work is as unique as you are as a human being. So nobody has it figured out. It's just about your willingness to do so.
Perfect. Let's end it right there. That's a perfect one to take it off. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to my co-host. This was lovely. And I just appreciate us having this conversation. All right, everyone, have a good rest of your day and weekend. Bye.